Hi, I'm Avalon Starlight, and you are listening to the Rebel Unicorns podcast. This season, we are diving deep into what being an empath in business actually looks like. Listen each week as I share tips and tricks to master your empath energy, as well as sharing incredible guests who have created successful businesses by claiming their empath title. Are you ready? Let's get our Rebel on. Hey, Rebel Unicorns. Happy new week. We're sitting here on this fine Monday, and I hope you enjoyed last Thursday's episode with Laura Hughes talking about self-care. Self-care as an empath. So we're just kind of layering from podcast to podcast what is required for you to be a fully functioning, supported, held, nurtured, safe empath in your business to show up and do this really awesome job that you were in this human body to experience. And this week we're talking about self-care because I think that self-care is something that isn't easy for all of us. I think back to, when I was young, I didn't really understand what self-care was. Nobody taught me how to take care of myself or place myself first. And in truth, it was kind of rewarded when I was young and doing more for others than I was doing for myself, right? In my family, it was like, oh, you're so strong. You're so capable. You are the one that we can depend on. And in that, I kind of put this gold star on myself. And I was like, look at my badge of honor. Everybody thinks that I am so great because I'm doing so much for everybody else. And I'm not doing anything for myself, and it's making everybody else really happy, and I'm not feeling great. And actually, I'll never forget this day because I grew up around mental illness and, having a mom and a sister and a son who all suffered. I've played the caregiver role for a really, really long time. And I honor that. I wouldn't change that for the world because it has given me such empathy as well as being an empath. And I have so much respect for those who are suffering. And I may not be able to understand it fully, having not really gone through much, but it's not an easy road to travel. So I honor anyone who is working through any diagnosis. And, I get it. And as somebody who was a caregiver or a witness to or experienced their life through that, it was also not easy and I don't think people talk about that, the caregivers of those who are going through those experiences, because we feel bad and we feel guilty and we don't want to hurt anyone. But at the same time, because I was constantly, especially as an empath, managing everybody else's emotions around me and making sure that everybody else was taken care of, when there was an experience when my son was 16 where we had to take a separation from each other, I can vividly remember walking into my living room and having almost probably the biggest panic attack of my life. And I had a panic attack because I had no idea who I was. None. I was like, if I'm not taking care of somebody, what do I do with myself? Who am I? What do I like? What do I enjoy? How do I spend my day? How do I, function in this world without micromanaging somebody else's well-being? And that moment right there, as challenging as it was and as scary as it was, which is such an interesting thing to have to say, is that one thought, who am I, without being a caregiver to all of these people, was one of those significant melded in my mind moments of, I have given myself over to so many people and I have no idea who Avalon Starlight is. And that became the journey of self-discovery right there in that moment. That would be the moment that I started to do my own personal self-care. It's interesting because I had bought all these self-development books. I'd never read them. I, had never meditated before. I ended up learning how to meditate. I started to go for walks on my own. I really had to build and forge this relationship with myself. And it's interesting because, Laura had talked about this space of feeling guilty. And I'm going to tell you how the guilt showed up for me. Because at the time I had decided to launch my business in 2016, and I didn't have anything stable yet. I was still, again, when you're not clear on who you are, you absolutely aren't going to be able to attract your soul family to you, your soul clients, any experiences or abundance, because you don't feel deserving and worthy of receiving these incredible, offerings from the universe. And I would feel really, really guilty because I was at home and my husband was at work all day. So he would actually have to leave the house and he would have to do all these things and he would have to sit at a desk, and I had the freedom to work from home and go for a walk in the middle of the day or do what I wanted in my business. And that felt really strange. And I felt so bad and I felt so guilty. And I remember some days that I would convince myself and him of how hard my day was. This is a really interesting thing because I didn't know who I was. And so, he would come in and he'd be like, "How are you?" And I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I had such a busy day." Meanwhile, it wasn't. It was an exceptional day. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I was trying to figure out how to get my business off the ground, but I wanted it to feel for him like I was in as much of a struggle or in pain as he was. And so I remember very vividly when I started to learn that the words that we use are one of the most impactful and important things that we can shift or change to change our reality. Words and thoughts are big deal. They're a big freaking deal. And so I remember thinking, because I kept saying every single day, "You come home, how are you?" "I'm so tired." How exhausted I felt. You know what I mean? Not only was I absorbing everybody else's emotions and taking on more and spreading myself too thin and thinking I had to solve everybody's problems and, doing this non-boundaried life as an empath, I was also trying to convince myself and everybody around me that I was way busier, that I had to look busy, that I had to express the struggle and the hardship of being a self-employed person in order for me to be respected and received. I remember those days. But all it did was really just make me super exhausted and tired, if I'm being honest. I would sleep all the time, and I wake up tired and I go to bed tired, because every day I would be telling everybody that I was tired. It's such an interesting concept. So when I started to change the language that I was using, that I had more than enough time and energy to get through my day, I started to receive a different reality coming back to me. And it was in this lesson of learning. So the first thing I did for self-care, if it's so interesting to do a podcast and realize what you're saying as you're saying it, the first thing I did with self-care was change my language. That was the most loving thing that I ever did for myself. 100%. Changing how I talked about myself, changing how I talked about my skills, changing how I talked about what it is that I put out as a business, what I, experienced. I changed and started to honor myself. When people would say, "How was your day?" I would say it was great. I got to go for a walk. I really enjoyed myself today. And I started to actually self-care myself through my own literacy of experience. The second thing that I did when I started to take care of myself is I wrote a list. I remember doing Leonie Dawson's program at the time. She is a fantastic Australian woman. She had these workbooks, and at the time, I've always been somebody who loves a workbook. I don't know about you, but if you give me a book and it has a workbook on the end, or you can just give me a workbook and I can learn about myself, I love that so much. So I was doing these Leonie Dawson's workbooks, and I joined her program online, and she had us do this thing where it was list 50 things you love to do. It might have been 100. But I'm saying 50 because I work with my clients now with making them do this list. And I remember that list took me days to figure out. Like, you're writing a list of 50 things that you love to do that have nothing to do with anybody else. So you're not doing it because you want to do it for somebody else. Like, oh, I love going for walks because my child loves to go for, I'm taking my child for a walk, or my dog for a walk. Or, I love going to the roller derby because that's what my husband likes to watch. You're really getting clear on what it is that you love to do for you. And that was the most painful list I've ever written. When you lost your identity, you don't know what you love to do. It was like, what do I love to do? And it forced me to go into my childhood and remember what I did when I was younger. Like, who was I before I was told I had to be somebody else again? And I got into this like list of, I love to write and I love to read and I love to, go for walks. And this list became my self-care list. This list became like almost like my own personal Bible to who I was and what I wanted. And it's a really fascinating thing, you guys. Everything that I listed on that list became what I did for a living. I was so lost when I first launched my business. I didn't know who I was going to serve or what I was going to do to help people all over the world. Because all I knew was that I wanted to be an online coach that helped people all over the world. And the details of that, I had none. No idea. Didn't know what my Stardust was. Didn't know what my purpose was. Didn't know, what I was supposed to have, logos, websites, which you don't. You just need to have a purpose and a mission and be open to sharing what it is that you're doing. That's the best thing that you can do when you start your business, is be willing to tell people that you're helping them and ask them for money for your service. And that's very uncomfortable when you've never done that. P.S. But when you do that and you start to learn that, that monetary exchange is so powerful for the result that they get, that, they've already dictated what it is that they want as their result before they've even hired you. Right? That was a contract that they made with the universe. And then you step in and you get to be the guide. I always explain it like a gondola driver from one port to another. And you just get to be the tour guide, the scenic route, because the contract is above you. You get to be part of the actual experience of taking the money and the energy so that they can get the result. It's very powerful. It was a very powerful, almost like recalibration that I did in my head when I first started my business, to be able to be the person who took the money so that my client could get the result. But this list that I wrote of these 50 things that I love to do were significant because if you don't know what it is that is your own self-care, right? Like, you have to be willing to get curious and you have to be willing to mess it all up. You can't get self-care wrong, P.S. Right? Like, if you're thinking about it like, well, what if I take the wrong fitness class, or what if I take the wrong... We're not kids anymore. We're not kids. You can actually stop things if you don't like them, right? Do you remember when your parents would sign you up for something and you could hate it all you wanted, but they were like, we paid for this, so you have to go to every single class, and you would try and find ways to like get out of it because you hated it so much, but you didn't get a choice back then. But now you do. Now you do. If you start something and you do not like it, you can say, I don't like this. I'll even tell you a story because I love to read. Like, I could live in books. I do live in books. I read books, at least 2 books a week. And one of them is fantasy, young adult fantasy, and one of them is a self-development book. It's just how I roll. Self-development in the morning, but before bed, I do not put anything in my brain that keeps me awake. So fantasy just kind of like dissolves me into this fabulous dream world of fairies and magic and witches and wizards. And so I remember... Oh my God, I lost my train of thought. I remember what I was going to say. That recently I've started books that I don't want to read. I used to force myself to finish a book. Like, you started this book, you've got to finish this book. And I'd be like, but I don't want to finish this book. So recently I have given myself permission to start books. And if I don't want to finish them, I don't. And I do tend to leave the bookmark in them just in case. I'm a work in progress. Just in case I want to go back to them. I don't want to have to reread the book. I want to know where I left off. But we get to do this now. We are our own authorities. So if we don't want to do something that we set out that we thought we wanted to do in terms of our self-care, we get to mess it up. We get to be curious and we get to say, this isn't it. This isn't it. Right? As you heard with, the conversation with Laura, she was like, I keep trying to do this meditation thing, but it's not for me. So many people say that. You don't have to do meditation. And there is more than one way to do meditation. It's finding what it is for you. I'll give you an example of what my self-care looks like now. Because I recently went back to yoga. And so I'm doing yoga in the morning. So now I wake up, I set my alarm for 4:47 a.m., which I get is not for everybody, but it's for me. And I go downstairs, I get a tea, I sit and I read a chapter of my book. Then after I've read a chapter of my book, I go to my yoga class, I come back, I journal and meditate, I go on throughout my day. Now, in my day, I take a lunch. That's very important to me. I'm not just somebody who believes in working through lunch. So part of my self-care is sitting and having a good meal and taking my dog for a walk. I like to do that at lunchtime. That's my favorite time to do it. And then my evening self-care is one of the biggest decisions that I made not that long ago was taking the TV off the wall so that I wasn't just mindlessly staring at a TV and losing my evenings and not remembering what happened from 5 until like 8 o'clock at night. And so now I do all sorts of things. Sometimes my self-care looks like playing Animal Crossing. If I'm being straight, if my brain's like, you tired, you don't want to be thinking anymore, I'm an Animal Crosser. I never thought I would say that. I've never been a gamer. So you guys are getting it like for real time right now. Sometimes my self-care looks like watching videos of a course that I'm taking, or I've taken it, like I've put in my queue of emails of like, you signed up for this course now. Do you want to actually do part of it? And sometimes I don't even finish the courses because I don't want to. But if it's something that I'm interested in, I'll finish that course. Sometimes my self-care looks like having a bath at night. Sometimes it looks like meditating for 20 minutes. But I can tell you one of the biggest things that I've implemented lately that feels so good is that when I get in bed at night, I write all the things that I was grateful for that happened throughout the day. So I'm setting my energetic frequency to that of the highest level of gratitude as I'm thinking about going to sleep. I gotta tell you, that's like probably my new favorite self-care is my nightly gratitudes. I know some people do them in the morning, which I totally respect, but I find when I'm reflecting on the day and saying, I'm so grateful that this happened, or I'm remembering a synchronicity that happened in the day, or conversations with my friends, or experiences that I'm having with my kids. And it's just like, oh yeah, today was such a great day. And I find that that's my favorite way to end. But it's doing all of these things and making sure that I'm placing myself and my energy at the forefront of the most important priority of the day that really allows me to show up more fully in my business. In the Blind Leap, I was talking about this with Laura. We talk about the body as your office for your business. And for me, my morning routine is like a cleaner coming in the morning and cleaning the office so that when my clients come in, they're walking into this beautiful place. And like when I take care of my external and I do my hair and my makeup, that it's like, making sure I'm taking care of the outside of the building, right? I want my clients to feel like they're coming into a really powerfully held sacred space and container for them to be able to experience and do the work that they're here to do, because I do deep work with people, right? Like my work is we look at the patterns and the programs of your childhood and why you're repeating them into your adult life. We do work of like claiming your dreams. And sometimes that can be more challenging than doing the work of the inner child. Because if you've never been taught to visualize or have a dream, or you're not going to allow yourself to have that, that's part of your self-care is learning to say, nope, this is what I want. What do you want? This is what I want. What do you want? I want this. And then standing in that sovereignty of that in which you desire. Sometimes that's harder. But, in order for my clients to feel like they can feel safe and cry and go through their different emotions, I've got to make sure that I'm holding myself in a clear energetically, and we're going to get into how to clear your energy in the next couple of weeks, but I'm making sure that my vessel, my office is at the utmost state of receiving and resiliency for them so that they can experience themselves fully. And I'm not getting hooked or triggered or and codependent with them. And the only way that I can ensure that I'm not, as an empath, getting sucked into the vortex of trying to make them better or fix them or doing all that is by doing my self-care. So epically important. So I want to know, great minds think alike, right? I'm just kidding. I want to know, because we're all so different. What do you find is the most important thing for you to do for your self-care? I would love for you to share this episode and tag me in it and say, oh, I love self-care. This is my favorite self-care. Or tell me that you are struggling with self-care and you don't know where to go, and we can have a little chat and whatever social media platform that you're tagging me in. I would love to hear your self-care story and your empath in business story. So at Avalon Starlight Coaching, share, tag. Let's actually start having these conversations about energy and about being an empath. Let's not be empaths in the closet anymore. Let's come out of the closet and declare our energy working skills to the world. That's my dream. That we can all openly share our spiritual gifts and what makes us so powerfully us, without shame and without fear. And so I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I hope that it kind of helps you have an idea of why self-care is so important. Understand that there's going to be emotions that come along with doing self-care. You will be feeling uncomfortable when you decide to make the boundaries or you decide to put yourself first. You may get pushback from your family or friends, and the key to doing the spiritual work is to hold yourself firm in those decisions and allow the people to process their emotions, because that's part of their journey, and allow yourself to go through your emotional wave, whatever feelings come up, and really placing yourself, especially as an empath, to understand that your office, your body, your vessel, in order for it to be able to hold the space for your soul clients, you need to be putting your self-care first and foremost. So in the last couple of weeks, we've done boundaries and we've done self-care. And these are the foundations. They're like the actual brick and mortar of everything else that you do as an empath. It's setting your containers, it's setting your protections, it's setting all of these things. But if you don't have your boundaries and you're not taking care of yourself, then you're constantly building a wall and tearing it down all day long. And so I'm stressing these two of utmost value, and we will keep building on how to integrate being an empath in your business to have you showing up at the highest frequency possible so that you can manifest and call the perfect, but your ideal life and business to you. Please note that boundaries and self-care are the pillars of your experience. And so that's just a significant thing. So I'm just placing it out there. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm so excited to share another guest this Thursday. Tag me at Avalon Starlight Coaching on any social media platform, and tune in next week as we explore even more what being an empath in business is all about. Wow, that episode was mind-blowing. I hope you had as many ahas listening to it as I had recording it. I would love to see the Rebel Unicorns podcast spread far and wide across the globe, across the universe. So if you want to share it on your social media with something that you found impactful, leave a review, send it to a friend. It would be so deeply appreciated. Also, a little side note, I did recently change my name. I downloaded a year and a half ago that my name was Avalon Starlight. It was previously my birth name was Tamara Arnold. And if you're interested in learning what your Rebel Unicorn house is, there's a quiz for that. Think Harry Potter, except you're sorted into how you are impacting the world with your Stardust and what energy you're here to shift and change. You can find out your Rebel Unicorn house at www.tamaraarnold.ca/quiz. Let me know, tag me in social media, send the quiz out, and join the Rebel Unicorns Facebook group to be in a community of like-minded spiritual entrepreneurs who understand that when you shift your energy, you transform your business.